Hello, and welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
Oh man, I'm editing out like 30 seconds of that. Welcome to our second annual. It's officially annual, but we're doing the Horsies again. It's our own little award ceremony.
That's right, the only award ceremony that matters. Fuck the Oscars, fuck the Golden Globes, you're here for the Horsies. We're here to tell you who lived, who died, and who should have died, just like in the tagline of our podcast. So sit back, enjoy our second officially annual Horsies. We made it. We did it.
Remember that we had a tagline? I didn't. I forgot.
Well, we're bringing it back. It's the year of resurrections, 2019. Soon. Is it going to be 2019 by the time this goes live?
Yes, it will be 2019. It will be the 3rd of 2019.
Well, outstanding. So we're going to do this pretty much the same as we did last year. I went back and listened to our old Horsies, had some fond memories, reminisced about the year of our Lord 2017, so it's time to do that again.
If you feel like you need to do that, I'm going to say this right now. If you feel like you need to do that, I apologize in advance because I edited that thing like a piece of shit.
We all learn, we all grow, and sometimes we backslide, but in this case, we just kept growing as a podcast, so that's fine.
But yeah, as Jackson was saying, we're going to be doing this again. We're going to go through our list of movies. We've got our little pre-discussion right now. We're going to talk about some of the things that we liked about this year, things that we didn't like. Before we get into the awards, obviously some of these awards are kind of spoilery. We're going to tell you what the movie is. You can kind of skip around. I'm going to go back and post and probably edit in some tags to be like, hey, skip ahead X amount of time to make it so that you can skip segments that you might not have the full story behind. Additionally, we're going to try and be as coy about spoilers as we can, just because I know that this is kind of a minefield, so sometimes it's going to be harder to than others.
At the very least, there won't be any spoilers in our, top 5 or most disappointing, or top 3, we're doing top 3. Yeah, if you're just looking at our general appraisal of the year, then there's no need to worry about us spoiling that, because ideally we want you to go and watch those things that we recommend, so.
Or don't watch, depending.
Depending.
So yeah, what did you think of this year in movies, just in general?
Yeah, so in general, I will say that I ended up being pleasantly surprised, because towards the beginning of the year, for the first 6 months, when we were deep in blockbuster season, there were a couple movies I remember being excited about, and a couple of things in general that were on my radar that just for one reason or another kept failing to thrill me. And I felt going to the movies every week, I feel like there was a string of episodes early in the year where we both just came and sat down and we were like, that sure was a 2018 blockbuster, huh? But things really turned around. I was worried that... I remember thinking to myself, halfway through the year, that the movie that is actually on my biggest disappointments list, that was in, June, I think. And so I remember sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, Lord, are there so few, good movies coming out that this movie that I feel really mixed on is going to be in my top 3? Jesus, I hope not. But the second half of the year really delivered. I saw a lot of great movies, pretty much from the months of, September to now. And I wouldn't say it's probably not as strong of a year for film as 2017 was. For the 2017 Horsies, I was able to just rattle off a big old list and had a genuinely hard time deciding which ones I was going to mention in my top 3. Not so much the case this year, but definitely a lot of quality films, and definitely stuff worth recommending, including stuff that I unfortunately missed out due to leaving the country, which weirdly I think was the turning point where movies started getting good.
Yeah, you missed some real good ones at that time.
So how about you, Sean? Any alternate takes on the year of our Lord 2018?
If you follow me on Twitter, I did tweet out like a short list of like what my recommendations for the movie or for the year were, like my general quick thoughts on it. And like looking at it now, it's pretty overwhelmingly that I went. The list of bad movies is very short for me. There's 5. There technically should be 6 because I accidentally put Hurricane Heist in the decent category, and that is not correct. So it's a short list of only 6 movies that I would consider bad. I've got a huge swath of movies that I would call decent, and like I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but like, you know, I wouldn't kick them out of bed. They're fine. I've got a decent number of movies that are recommended, but it's because they're like weird and trashy and dumb. So a lot of movies fell into that. But overall, like, I have a huge number of movies that I would recommend seeing this year. I was kind of surprised by how many I really, really liked and found either a lot of fun or really smart or just like visually stunning. So I'm pretty overall pleased with how 2018 came out.
Yeah, I think I would agree overall. Yeah, because if I didn't do the same thing quite as formally, but I feel like a lot that was in your highly recommended column was shared by me, and then the stuff that you had in there that I didn't see would have been swapped out with stuff that you didn't see that I saw. So, yeah, overall, pretty solid. Very good.
Oh, we've been doing this for like a year and a half now, and we come up to very good.
Good.
So speaking of very good, what were your very good 3?
So my very good 3, my very goodest 3. I'm pretty set on my number 1, but just so there's no confusion, the runners up, I guess, aren't like ordered in like 2 or 3 any particular way. So I guess I'll just start off with one that I saw earlier in the year that we wanted to talk about on the show, but due to the ever-looming problem of me living in podunk rural United States, didn't come out until it was no longer relevant. And that movie was Isle of Dogs, and that movie surprised me because Wes Anderson... I've watched a few Wes Anderson movies and really enjoyed most of them, but... his aesthetic is definitely, his style is his style, for better or worse. You know, very twee, with a natural inclination towards pretension. And so I was a little worried, just because I love doggos so much, that I'd be going in and seeing this really smarmy Wes Anderson movie about doggos, which to me is just about the most sincere thing on the planet, but I was completely wrong. There was a lot of the, classic sort of deadpan humor, Wes Anderson style, but at its heart, the movie really was this precious animated film with a little bit of darkness about what wonder and good doggos bring into the world. And, there's the pun in the title, like Isle of Doggos, I love dogs. And it really lives up to that and really surprised me. And it's kind of a shame that we didn't get to talk about it on the show. So this is my hearty recommendation for that film.
Yeah, I think Isle of Dogs fell on the bottom half of my top 10 of this year. I'm going to be tweeting out a top 10 list shortly after we finish recording this. I actually compiled that. So once again, if you're not following me on Twitter, another great reason to, I guess. Great's a stretch. But that'll be my full top 10 list. Do we want to go back and forth on 1, 1, 1, 1?
Oh, that's how we did it last year. So I think that was a good format.
And that was your number 3?
That was my number 3. Yes.
Okay. I think my number 3 is kind of a toss-up, and I have Hereditary written down as my number 3. But it's kind of between that and Annihilation. I've been meaning to go back and rewatch Annihilation. I went to Target to go buy it, but for whatever reason, it was the one fucking movie that came out this year that they didn't have in stock. So instead I watched John Wick, and that was really good, but not really the point of what I'm trying to get at right now. I really liked Annihilation, and I really liked Hereditary, so I'm going to kind of talk about both of them a little bit, and fuck you, Jackson.
Boo, cop out.
No, I think they were both really good in their own ways. Hereditary was weird and creepy and unsettling, and I absolutely adored it. Annihilation, the only reason I put Hereditary... I'll tell you what, if you want to play this, we'll play this. All right, Hereditary is number 3. The only reason it edged out Annihilation is because I have not watched it again, and had I watched it last night, I probably would have put Annihilation in front of Hereditary. But I didn't, and so I'm going to say Hereditary because it was creepy, unsettling. I really liked the kind of motifs of never really being sure what was actually happening, even as far as like the audience goes, and you fill in the characters and everything like that. I thought that was fucking wonderful, and I really adored it. So Hereditary was my number 3.
Yeah, we'll be talking about Hereditary quite a bit on this year's Horsies, and so to give credence to what you're saying, it definitely was one of the more memorable films of the year for sure. Like, I kept coming back to it. Yeah. So I guess for my number 2, I thought about this a lot, and I think that my number 2 has to be Won't You Be My Neighbor, the Mr. Rogers documentary. If you go and watch the episode where you talk about that, you can see what was my first and hopefully my only, like, probably legit meltdown on recording. Because despite the fact that it is a movie about a wonderful, kind man who did his best to do a lot of good for the world, it also had, like, a twinge of subtlety and darkness to it, especially when they start talking about, I think the one that I ended up getting fixed on was when Mr. Rogers just didn't know what to say when 9/11 happened. And so 2018, if we're getting outside the realm of laughs, outside the realm of memes, outside the realm of movies, 2018 was a very difficult year for me. I don't think it's a stretch to say that it is the worst period of time for me to have been on this planet. Bad things kept happening one after another. And so Mr. Rogers' documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, it both served the purpose of trying to remind me of, like, what is good and worth caring about in the world, but also that it sort of wrestled with that darkness a little bit, kept me really fixated and thinking about it for a long time. And it's it stuck with me in a way that honestly probably not even my number 1 has. And it's wonderful. It's great. It's a real tearjerker. There's, I think everybody should watch it, regardless of if you have any sort of nostalgia or fondness for the original Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
I think actually it's that lack of fondness or nostalgia for the original Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood that kept it out of my top 10. I think I ended up putting it at like 11. So sorry to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I guess. But I really liked Won't You Be My Neighbor too. It was like super heartfelt, super good. I loved watching it. And as I said, like, I never really watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So for it to have as much of an impact on me as it did says a lot to the quality of the documentary and, you know, how fucking good it was. That said, my number 2 goes to 8th Grade, a movie that we would have no business talking about on this podcast, because it's about an 8th grade girl and just general life, and it is the most real shit I watched all year. It fucking made me cringe so far into my seat I almost left the theater. And I mean that in the highest praise possible. Like, it knew exactly what it was doing. Watching it, I felt like I was just reliving that time period of my life. And it wasn't so much I was cringing at the movie as much as I'm like, oh my god, I see myself in this. I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. Let me out of here. Let me out of here. It's such a good fucking movie that I highly recommend this to everybody. The main protagonist is a girl, but like it transcends gender. Like, it doesn't matter, guy, girl, whatever you choose to identify as. Like, this movie knows how to play on those anxieties and awkwardness of your formative years, and it hurts. It hurts inside.
This is a movie that I missed. This is The one I wish I had seen the most, probably the one that I am going to go seek out when I have a little bit of time, because I too feel like I would get a lot out of a movie about 8th grade. Probably, I mean, if we're talking about the worst years of my life, that's probably the other one. So I'm really bummed that I didn't get to see it during its run in the theater. But
I was in Japan, yeah.
Gentle flex, like, being overseas and all. Like, I don't have time for these children's films. But no, I definitely want to seek this one out. And it sounds like it is a worthy selection of Sean's number 2. So with that, there's only one thing left, only one movie for me to mention that isn't just an honorable mention in some way. And for me, my favorite movie of the year, the one that had me the most hyped, the one that was the most enjoyable for me to watch in the theater, the one that really took me by surprise and blew me away, was Sorry to Bother You. This movie pretty much ticked all my boxes. Very highly political, very rich in theme, but not in a way that like obfuscates itself for pretentious reasons. It's funny, it's smart, it's got some great performances. It has, I mean, I can't say the other thing that it has because that's a spoiler. But it's very weird in a way that you're probably not prepared for if you don't know about it going in. So great movie.
And you shouldn't. Like, don't look up anything about this movie beyond the trailers.
No, absolutely not. Honestly, like, that's probably all I can say about it without explaining what makes it good. But the nice thing about this movie is that, like, what makes it good is obvious, and you just need to watch it. And I love a movie like that, especially when it's got some weird, funny, memey shit. So, go out and watch it, everybody. That's your New Year's resolution, if you haven't. And if you have, well, I guess you just have nothing to live for now, do you?
I mean, you could live for my number 1 recommendation, which would be fucking Bad Times at the El Royale. I told you it was gonna be this when we did the review of this one. And hey, look at that. I'm saying it again. It's fucking Bad Times at the El Royale. A lot of people, I feel like, didn't actually go watch this movie just because I don't remember seeing much buzz about it at all. I know it ended up being really polarizing among film critics, and I completely understand why. Because I need to say this, and I need to make this as abundantly clear as possible. This is my number 1 movie because it's my favorite movie of the year. It is not the best movie of the year. It is just, there's a lot of movies that are more technically, coherent, better. The story is more, fleshed out. There's a lot of flaws with Bad Times is really what I'm getting at. But it was such a visual feast for me, and I really liked the kind of disjointed narrative it was going for. The aesthetic was just my shit through and through. I ate this movie fucking up, and I'm so excited to watch it again, because I think it's coming out on DVD like the day we're recording, so I'm probably going to go buy that.
Outstanding. A very good choice for the very goodest movie of the year.
Very good.
I too greatly enjoyed Bad Times. I haven't made a formal top 10 or anything like that. I imagine this would probably be in that bottom half, but it's definitely a thrill ride every second. It definitely looks amazing. It's like aesthetic as fuck. It's great. So you know what? Sean's right. If you have nothing to live for, having already seen the best movie of 2018, Sorry to Bother You, then you can go see the other best movie of 2018, Bad Times at the El Royale, and fill you with glorious purpose.
Do you have any honorable mentions that you just kind of want to throw out there before we get into the rest of it? Which is going to be most disappointing is next. So let's keep it positive for a little bit longer.
Yeah, let's keep it positive. So definitely a big runner-up, probably my number 4 that we didn't talk about on the show, that I saw in the theater was Boy Erased, a coming-of-age drama about, it's nonfiction, about the whole, like, Jesus can't pray the gay away, conversion therapy, a boy going through that, and it's really good, it's really sad, really powerful, but I think also tends to avoid a lot of the tropes that make a lot of, like, LGBT plus movies, that sort of, I know a big criticism, a lot of those kind of movies, especially ones like from the 90s, are that, you know, they always have to end in tragedy, that it's always just about how bad life is, and there is a lot of tragedy. In fact, it has, like, if you're gonna go see this movie, then, like, content warning, it has a very, like, graphic instance of sexual assault, but the way that's handled into the whole character situation and, like, how he has to wrestle with that trauma was really well done in a way that I don't know if I've ever seen in a movie before. Movies tend to not, big Hollywood movies tend to not handle that subject matter very well. And so even though the movie is so dark like that, the fact that it still manages to have some, like, uplifting moments to it is very impressive. I thought it was a very, very high quality drama.
I have not seen that yet, but I will absolutely put it on my list. I was kind of wary about it. A lot of drama movies I kind of steer away from, but I feel like I need to fix that. There's just something about drama movies that I feel like I'm exhausted looking at them. I like, if you're trying to make a point, I tend to like movies that, like, have some aesthetic to it or are science fiction and whatnot. And that's just, you know, how I was raised. And I need to start actually being like, all right, I need to just knuckle down and watch some of these dramas. I need to go fucking watch Roma and shit still. So
yeah, I think it's definitely worth doing. I think that I too, like, generally like tend to veer into, like, the more, like, aesthetically unique, the more, like, science fiction, fantastical, like, that tends to be my jam more. But this was a very, very good drama, really, really emotionally affecting. So,
well, I'm gonna recommend as my honorable mention something that it's basically on the exact opposite spectrum, because I have not stopped thinking about this movie since I saw it. It is fucking fantastic, and I think technically it came out last year, but it got released for a wider release in the States this year, is fucking Anna and the Apocalypse. We did not talk about this on the podcast because I was worried that Jackson wouldn't get it, and in fact did not get it. But my god, is it a wonderful fucking movie. It is it's Shaun of the Dead meets High School Musical, and it's set at Christmas. And if that's not enough to get you to go watch this, I don't know what more you need from me. I adore every second of it. It is tropey, it is cliched, it is predictable, and it is wonderful in every fucking way. The whole thing is available on Spotify, or the whole soundtrack is available on Spotify if you just want a taste of it. There's so much to talk about with it. I'm actually in the process of writing a review for 25 Years Later site on it, just because I want to talk about this movie. It's just so fucking good. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to find it in theaters anymore. If you can, do so. If not, find a way to rent it, watch it. This is going to be a yearly Christmas movie for me. Like, just about guaranteed.
I'm really sad that I missed this one, but maybe it'll be our Christmas episode next year.
It might well be. It's fucking wonderful.
I guess before we move on to the negative shit, just two more, like, honorable mentions from me that, like, weren't really in the consideration for my top, but I wanted to give a shout out to. The Hate U Give, I thought was a really great movie. Not as good as the book, which is why maybe I wasn't as like jazzed about it as it was when I first read it. But it was a very faithful adaptation, very high quality. So that was very good. And then I don't know if this will out me as, like, basic or, like, dumb, But I have no idea what the public opinion on this movie is. But I really, really liked Ralph Breaks the Internet. I was not expecting to. I thought it was going to be like a memey shit sequel, but it actually had like a pretty, I think, unique story and subject matter for a kid's movie as far as like the main character relationship between Ralph and Vanellope, and was just overall pretty pleasantly surprised by it. Thought it was really great. So that's going to round out my honorable mentions.
I still have not seen Ralph Breaks the Internet, and it's a high thing for me to go see. I just got really bogged down. Like, I've seen, I think, like 10 movies in the past 3 weeks, and none of them were Ralph Breaks the Internet. A lot came out recently. But yeah, so let's kind of dive into the more negative stuff. We haven't gotten to our official Horsies yet, so it's still spoiler-free zone, don't worry. But let's talk about what was your most disappointing movie of the year?
So my most disappointing movie is actually one that is on your top 3 or maybe top 4, depending on how Annihilation turns out. And that, of course, is Hereditary. And I was torn. I thought it was either going to be this or it was going to be Avengers Infinity War. But then I sort of realized that I didn't have that high of expectations for Infinity War to begin with. So I wasn't really that disappointed by it. Hereditary, however, everything that Sean said about it is true. Like, there's a lot of good creepiness. There's a lot of good camera work. And like I said, it's very memorable, which can seem like a backhanded compliment. And in some ways, I mean it like that, but in other ways, I don't. Like, this is genuinely a movie that has stuck with me throughout the year. But there's a point in, like, the beginning to middle of the movie where, like, the movie really begins to pick up and is, like, probably my favorite, like, 20 to 30 minutes of film in the entire year. Like, some of the most, like, challenging, emotionally affecting stuff in the whole year. But then, for me, after a certain point, it kind of begins to taper off, and starts to lose what I liked about it so much. And that's the worst kind of disappointing to me. Not when I'm really, really hyped about something and then I hate it, because then I have something to hate, and hate can be very fun in its own right. But this is the kind of disappointing where, like, that niggling feeling of something not quite living up to its full potential in your eyes, that brings down the mood a bit. So even though, I wouldn't ever say that it was a bad movie or a terrible movie or anything like that. It was the most disappointing for me just because it set the bar really high early on and then sort of floundered, in my opinion, after that. And so that's it. That's me. That's Hereditary. Take it or leave it. Bye.
My most disappointing should not be any surprise to anyone who knows me and knows my movie tastes, because I will go to bat for every Cloverfield movie. That is the first 2. The Cloverfield Paradox was such a fucking disappointment to me. I absolutely, a lot of people really like 10 Cloverfield Lane because it's like a genuinely good fucking movie. It's a masterpiece. It's wonderful. The first Cloverfield I adore. I was positive that going back to watching it, like, I showed it to Jackson actually like 2 or 3 years ago. And I was positive I was gonna be like, oh, this is gonna be really disappointing. And it ended up holding up really well. I understand why people don't like the shaky cam and whatnot. But I fucking love it. I love Cloverfield, and I love 10 Cloverfield Lane so much. And so for the Cloverfield Paradox to be so disappointing really hurt me. It did away with a lot of the tropes that made the first 2 really good, which is, not having answers and being more about a small personal story. And a lot of, exposition through just the knowledge of the universe and not so much, a lot of showing, don't telling. This movie basically tried to answer a shit ton of questions. It told everything, like every expositionary set was just people shouting dialogue at each other to let you know what's happening. And it didn't feel personal at all. Like, there was a personal story on the ground, but like that was kind of ancillary and weird and dumb. There was like 10-ish minutes of a really good Cronenberg movie, where like there's just some genuine body horror that was really uncomfortable. And Chris O'Dowd is, as always, great, but he doesn't really belong in a Cloverfield movie, in my opinion. So the Cloverfield paradox is just a big bummer to me. That's all there is to it.
You know, when we were doing our pre-discussion, and you had said, like, oh, come on, you know what my most disappointing is. It's obvious. And I genuinely couldn't think of it. The only reason it was so surprising to me that this was your most disappointing was that I forgot this movie came out at all.
And that's the biggest condemnation I can give of it.
So what's your worst movie then?
Oh, man. See, that's the one that I'm honestly having the hardest time deciding on.
We got some real stinkers to pick from.
Yeah, Hurricane Heist is up there, but that one was just boring to me more than anything. Which, like, for our guidelines, like, it is definitely up there as one of the worst things we've ever talked about on the podcast. 50 Shades Freed fucking sucked, and yes, I have seen all of them. Future World was bad and a nightmare, but I think like the situation surrounding it was a lot of fun. Fantastic Beasts 2 was, things just kept fucking happening. So I think, honestly, I think my worst of the year, and it actually kind of falls into the most disappointing too, because I really like the director, was Mute. Duncan Jones did Moon, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, and Mute was a follow-up to it set in the same universe. And I was really excited about it. His aesthetic is generally really good, and I like a lot of what he does. Fun fact, and I'm just going to mention this because a lot of people don't know it, he's actually David Bowie's son, which is absolutely insane to me. That was a totally unrelated aside. It's just one of those facts that I have to mention whenever I can.
What a talented Joestar lineage.
Seriously, though. But Mute fucking sucked. It was not fun. It was dour. It was abysmal. There was no joy to be had from it. Paul Rudd was in it. I forgot about that. And like, everything about this. Yeah, like this movie should have been my shit. I like Paul Rudd a lot. And it was just bad. It made me feel shitty watching it. I felt just crummy all the way through it. It was not what I wanted. And before somebody's like, well, it's a detective noir story. What do you expect from it? I like Blade Runner. And like, that's absolutely definition of that type of shitty, gritty bullshit. But it doesn't leave me upset.
Oh, wow. You know, I was expecting this to be Cloverfield Paradox. Yeah, I forgot that Duncan Jones made another bad movie. It's so weird because he made two movies, Moon and Source Code. Like, Moon in particular is like a cult classic, like everyone who's seen it loves. And
it's so fucking good.
Yeah, including me. You showed it to me, and I thought it was great. Source Code, I know that came out around the same time as like Inception, and it had some detractors for its wonky ending, but overall was like a pretty tight, interesting, like Groundhog Day style thriller. But then he made Warcraft.
I actually have a lot of people coming back and defending Warcraft now.
Really?
Yeah, like there's a giant kind of counterculture being like, hey, Warcraft actually isn't as bad as everyone said it was. And like, I can't attest either way because I've never seen it. I feel like I kind of should, but
I was going to say, I wanted to watch Warcraft for the director alone, and then I was dissuaded from it after hearing about what a nightmare it was. But, you know, if this is a Spider-Man 3 scenario where there's truly, like, a small group of enlightened individuals who see the truth on this supposedly bad movie, then I'm down, I'm game.
Yeah, I might take that sometime in 2018 to go back, or 2019, Jesus Christ, to go back and actually hunt it down, because I'm curious now. Like, was Moon a fluke? Because that's the only other Duncan Jones movies I've seen. Like, I've never actually seen Source Code.
I haven't seen Source Code since it came out. I really liked it, and I feel like it would hold up at least fine. Like, it would still be pretty good. But I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe Moon was a fluke.
Well, what's your worst?
So my worst, there really can be only one of two answers, and for me, the clear winner is the Hurricane Heist, with a dishonorable mention to Future World. But as you mentioned, Future World, the whole scenario around that was just such a riot. And the other thing about it is that, like, in addition to just the conspiracy behind, like, 513 Pictures and whoever that guy and his son is, it just opened me up to, like, this whole weird, bizarre realm of cinema that I had no idea existed. These, like, direct-to-video faux blockbusters, like, with major names and stars in them being released directly on MGM's website, all of which have something to do with James Franco. It's just so strange and was such an enlightening experience that I can't
And so clearly a money laundering scheme.
So clearly a money laundering scheme that, like, I just can't hate Future World in the same way that I hate Hurricane Heist. And boy, let me tell you, do I hate Hurricane Heist. Which is amazing to me, because it's pretty hard for me to genuinely hate a movie, like, feel a really, really strong sort of like hatred for it, because pretty much the only scenario where I see a bad movie and am emotionally invested in it enough to hate it is when it's like a sequel to a franchise, like I was real sour about, like, The Dark Knight Rises, for example, when it came out, and Hurricane Heist is a movie that I hate on that same kind of level, yet has absolutely no pedigree that I really care about behind it. Like, I wasn't too invested in the continuing career of the guy who did the first Fast and Furious or any of the actors involved. But the fact...
What about Breeze and Wind?
What about Breeze? I was trying to think about how to shoehorn in the fact that one of the main characters' name is fucking Breeze in there. So Hurricane Heist, it takes this premise that by all rights should be immensely fun and makes one of the most boring, like, tedious, dull movies that I've ever sat through. It felt like 5 hours long, and it was only an hour and a half. And I don't understand how they managed to fuck it up so badly. Yeah, so it can't be anything other than the Hurricane Heist. I stand by my statement that it is the worst thing we've ever talked about on the show.
Oh, yeah. The only reason that Mute is not the worst thing we talked about on the show is because we didn't talk about it on the show. And actually, I think the biggest condemnation of Mute is that I texted you after watching it and said, don't watch it. I don't want to talk about it.
I remember that. I remember being like, oh, no. That
like,
bad.
it was without, I'm just like, no, don't even fucking bother with it. We're not talking about it. I fucking hated it. So, like, that should say a lot about how I feel about Mute. With that, do you want to transition into our actual awards?
Let's get to it. Let's get some Horsies in here. Let's have some whinnies, some nays, some good times.
All right, and with that, the Horsies begin. Our categories this year, much like last year, will be person burgers, aka the people who died to prove how evil someone was in the worst possible way. Just something stupid, like they died like getting turned into a burger and then forced to be eaten, like a person burger.
The most excessive deaths, if you want to put a neat little label on it, that isn't Pete Person Burger.
The next category is the most pointless death. Deaths that they just fucking happen and you are left wondering why.
Closely related cousin to the People Burger, but a bit different in function.
Then we get into closer to our actual tagline, which, remember that, is who should have died? What movie do we feel someone should have died in?
Self-explanatory.
We have the funniest death. Pretty self-explanatory as well.
I was going to say also self-explanatory.
And then we have the saddest death. Also self-explanatory.
I feel like my role in these awards has diminished to nothing now.
Oh, don't worry. Your role will spike very shortly. So as I said, we're going to announce the category. We will both kind of give the movie that we feel it belongs to, and we'll discuss. And in that discussion is where I'll put the spoiler warning, and I'll let you know where you can skip to get to the next category. So with that, let's begin with the person burger. Jackson, what movie featured your person burger?
There really can only be one. There was only one movie I saw this year that had a very clear, moment in terms of deaths that felt really excessive and unnecessary. And it was, of course, from Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald.
And I'm going to agree with him on this one. So, that's that. If you don't want to hear about Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, skip ahead to 45:16. 4 minutes, 23 seconds ahead.
So, the thing about Fantastic Beasts, I had two other contenders for this award that I decided would be better suited for the next award. So we'll talk about them. But the moment in particular that I'm talking about in Fantastic Beasts is when Grindelwald has escaped, our big villain, big stupid dumb meth head looking Johnny Depp, and he is talking to his followers about his whole, guiding philosophy about, we're not gonna kill all the muggles, there's no need for genocide, we're, just like cattle and beasts of burden have their purpose in the world, so too do muggles. They are just, beneath us. No need to kill them. And then immediately, this is after they have broken into this muggle couple's house and killed them to, use as their base, which is not the moment in question I'm talking about. That's pretty standard, villainy, nothing too out of the ordinary there. You gotta get rid of the witnesses. The moment that I'm talking about comes after, where they hear, a noise, maybe a cry or a laugh, and they find a baby or a toddler sitting in a room without its parents. And the henchmen look at Grindelwald and wonder what to do. And he's like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And they leave. And then of course we see the green Avada Kedavra sparks as Grindelwald kills the baby.
Well, not Grindelwald, one of his assistants.
Was it one of his assistants? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. He leaves and they do it. Okay, so I got that mixed up.
Yeah.
So that, one of the few nice things I had to say about The Crimes of Grindelwald was how Grindelwald himself... Very few. But Grindelwald himself was a better villain by any reasonable metric than Voldemort. Voldemort is video game villain tier, big spooky boss battle guy to fight at the end, and they try to portray him as a fascist rising to power, but it's so cartoony and over the top that you can't take it seriously, whereas Grindelwald at least has more of that silver tongue, that sort of seductiveness. The comparison I made would be that Grindelwald would be the guy that the New York Times writes an op-ed about how this trendy hipster is making fascism cool again, which is much more realistic in terms of how people get seducted into fascism as an ideology. So the fact that we get this statement that shows that while he's bad and his ideology is harmful and poisonous, we get this statement that maybe he's a little bit more of a person than Voldemort was, and creates maybe this interesting setup where he takes the kid under his wing, and either he turns out to be he senses the magic in him, and he turns out to be a wizard kid that he literally indoctrinates Hitler Youth style. Maybe it's a muggle kid that he decides to be useful in one way or another as either just a servant or again spreading his ideology through the muggle world somehow. It could have been something clever, but it wasn't. They killed a baby and then had him walk away to show he was edgy and yet also cowardly and couldn't do it himself. So the worst possible option.
Yeah. You know what? I have to say this just because I'm always afraid that, after the whole blowback against critics from, fucking Batman vs. Superman, where you just don't get it. You don't understand. It's deep. We get it. we get what's going on here. It's, the two-faced side of fascism and yada, 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 yada. It doesn't make it good. It's still bad. It's still dumb.
It's a boring choice and an excessive choice, which is why it's bad.
And that is what a person burger is. Boring, excessive, and just to be like, look at how bad he is.
Very bad awards.
Which brings us to our next category, which is the most pointless death. Jackson, what's your most pointless death movie?
So my most pointless death movie, I've got an honorable mention and I've got a main mention. So the most pointless death for my honorable mention is Deadpool 2, and my main award for this one is going to be Avengers Infinity War. And I feel like by saying that, everyone already knows what I'm talking about. Because everyone memed about that movie.
Yeah, I'm going to actually also say Deadpool 2, though a totally different situation from his Deadpool 2. So it's a little bit more interesting than you might think it would be. That said, if you don't want to hear about Avengers Infinity War or Deadpool 2, skip ahead to 52:16, 6 minutes and 8 seconds ahead.
So do you want to go first on this one?
Sure. My biggest complaint with Deadpool 2, and if you've listened to our episode, you'll probably be familiar with it, was the death of Deadpool's X-Force, or whatever he ended up calling them. Just because I feel like the movie kind of got bogged down in how Deadpool-y it was, and I thought a lot of the added-on characters were a lot of fun and could have been very cool and kind of a nice counterbalance. And so when they all get wood chippered and stuff, I was just really disappointed. And it was a cool way to show Domino's powers and everything, yeah. But you don't just kill Terry Crews. That's really what it boils down to. I was really disappointed by a lack of more characters, because a lot of them seemed like they could have been really cool. And you could have killed one or two of them. Just keep Terry Crews alive. I'm not fixated on Terry Crews. You're fixated on Terry Crews.
So we actually, if you want to hear the original argument, because we had quite a lengthy debate about whether or not this moment constituted a people burger back in the day. So you could go listen to that. For what it's worth, I laughed. I thought the moment was funny to at least some degree, and again did like how it set up the domino scene. But I respect Sean's statement on this matter. However, what I don't respect is Deadpool 2 killing the female lead from the first one, Vanessa, I believe her name is, who was her own kind of interesting character in her own right, and was a pretty unique dynamic between her and Deadpool that we don't really see in a lot of movies. They have their little romance, and then they kill her off in the first couple minutes, and in the stupid James Bond parody opening sequence, have the gall to pretend like they're edgy and subverting expectations by fridging the main love interest, even though that is literally one of the oldest tropes in the book. It is a trope named after an infamous scene in a comic book. You are not special, Deadpool 2. You are doing the obvious thing, in fact. And then, not what makes it especially pointless, because if it were that alone, it wouldn't be a good death, but since the rest of the movie is about Deadpool, wrestling with grief and wanting to die, I can't exactly call it pointless. What does make it pointless is that Deadpool gets a meme time travel machine from Cable at the end, and then he goes back in time and prevents it from happening, and a bunch of other jokes, he goes and shoots Ryan Reynolds when he's reading the Origins Wolverine script. And so, apparently that's canon, according to the filmmakers. And Deadpool 2, again, kind of took itself weirdly seriously. That was one of my criticisms of it. So the fact that, they just undo the whole movie with a meme and did it in the stupidest possible way and felt so proud of fridging their female lead made this a particularly egregious one. In any other year, that would have easily been my number one. However... There was one other, several other deaths, many deaths that managed to kill, not only my interest in a movie, but my interest in an entire franchise that's been running for a decade. And
sorry, that felt like you needed some air horns.
And that, of course, thank you, Sean, for the build-up. But that, of course, is half the Marvel Universe in Avengers Infinity War. And I remembered that, like, before we had gone to see the movie, we did our prediction episode where we talked about the MCU. And I hadn't really considered it a possibility that, like, anyone would die for real outside of a predictable character or two, just because of how toothless the MCU was. But then when Sean proposed that they would do it, that they would do the snap, but then just bring everybody back, that was a much darker fate. Because truly then, once everyone comes back to from the snap, there are no consequences unless they are corporately decided. Like, if Iron Man dies, or if Captain America dies in the next movie, it's only because they have decided that they don't need to make any more of those movies. And everyone knows it. That's why everyone thought, like, Cap or Iron Man or both were going to die in Infinity War, and very likely could in the next movie. However, what we got was Spider-Man and Black Panther, like, the most popular superhero of all time, and the biggest, like, box office success of the year before Infinity War, getting turned into dust, and we're supposed to pretend like it will be permanent and lasting in any way. And it was at this point where I had already been so tired of a lot of the MCU's, like, tropes and trappings, that they, like, a lot of people had this moment with Ultron, but it took me until now to finally feel like, all right, I'll go see Endgame, I'll go see how this finishes out, just because I've been following this story for, like, over a decade now. But I can't be asked to give a damn about any of these characters anymore. I'll go see Black Panther, I'll go see Spider-Man, but, like, I'm done with it. I'm so exhausted by all these meaningless deaths.
That's why you should go see Aquaman instead.
I can get that DC alternative. Get the deep depth that is the Martha scream.
Aquaman's actually really good, and I really liked watching it.
I genuinely, after your recommendation, am looking forward to watching Aquaman. So
I guess I'm going to give a quick mini review of Aquaman because I want to talk about it, and this is a good place to do so. Don't expect a superhero movie, and you'll have a lot of fun.
Honestly, don't expect a superhero movie is probably, like, the best possible thing you could tell me, because now when I hear superhero movie, I just, like, my stomach churns. Like, I'll only want to see a movie starring a superhero if it looks like it's not a superhero movie, like Logan or something.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing with this one more than anything is, like, don't expect... Because, like, I was so spoiled by Spider-Man actually going and, like, saving people that I'm like, oh, that's what a superhero movie is again. Yeah. And that is not what this is.
No, I mean, it is what we're talking about in the Spider-Man episode. I see what you mean now. Yeah, no, we haven't had a real superhero movie besides Enter the Spider-Verse in so long.
Yeah, no, this is, like, anti that. Like, even, the Marvel movies kind of shy away from having their superheroes kill people. Yeah, no.
Just... All right. Well, I'm curious to see this.
As I said, it's not good, but I genuinely had a lot of fun with it and recommend it. So there's your quick Aquaman review. Let's talk about who should have died.
Who should have died? So I guess my contender for this is also Infinity War, weirdly enough.
And mine is Incredibles 2. So if you don't want to hear about Infinity War again, or The Incredibles 2, skip to 1 hour and 13 seconds, 6 minutes and 1 second ahead.
So, the thing about Infinity War is that there is one potential death that almost really got to me. Because, as I said, going in, I expected that Iron Man was going to die one way or another, even after Sean had proposed the theory that they would snap and bring everybody back. And so there's that moment where Thanos has broken through the Iron Man suit. He's got Tony at the end of a spear, and he kind of gives him this like grave, solemn speech. And he's like, I like, you really put up a good fight. You're the first person to make me bleed. I really respect you as a warrior. The people of Earth will survive. I hope they remember you. And it seems like they're really building up to that moment, and it really was getting to me in a way that I wasn't expecting, just because I had been such a big fan of the Iron Man character since like high school. And like, even though in my brain I had like logically realized that he would probably be killed off, like that hadn't sunk in that like this character that I've been following through so many movies now might finally get a permanent end. And the thought was like genuinely sad and emotional to me. So when it doesn't happen, when Iron Man is in fact one of the few people to survive to set up like OG Avengers 4, I won't say that it was necessarily a bad move. I don't know how Avengers 4 is yet. I mean, I'm gonna go see it and pretty much probably call it a day after that. Like, with the can't just leave the saga unfinished. But in the moment, like, those like very real emotions that I felt were very cheapened by the fact that like they played with it as such a close call. And I guess, again, you could argue that it's also like, oh, everyone's expecting Iron Man to die. He was in like a crucified pose on the poster. Like, they're doing another subversion of expectations. But this was a moment where I felt like it would have been more emotionally resonant for me, at least. I'm not going to argue that, like, in terms of the film, because it would require making a different film, that it would be necessarily better. Not one of those cases. But for me, I felt a little bit toyed with, and not in a good way.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, we were all kind of expecting one of them to die. And so for both of them to just kind of be like, nah, we're still good. I feel also kind of sets up expectations for Endgame that aren't exactly great. So I do kind of totally understand why you would put him as who should have died. As for mine, it's a little bit more general and arguably kind of meta. Because I don't think anyone in particular should have died in Incredibles 2. I just think someone should have. The Incredibles 1 just had so many random schlubs and people dying and like things that are just clearly disastrous happening. And I liked that. It felt like it had some teeth to it and was weird and kind of adult in a winky way. And then Incredibles 2, I honestly don't think this would have even been included had they not said multiple times, like, there were no casualties. We're all okay. Nobody died here. So it was just strange to have multiple times, like, nobody died. And I'm like, okay, but that just feels reactionary and dumb. Like, part of the charm of the first one was that it was just balls to the walls hardcore. So,
I mean, the first one was such, like, an adult, like, family sitcom drama in a lot of ways that just happened to be animated. So the fact that they... not that Incredibles 2 is a bad movie by
it's still very good.
Yeah, by any reasonable, like, definition, but the fact that it felt a lot more sanded down, a lot more corporate safe was pretty disappointing, especially since we had just watched the original, like, the week before, so...
And I mean, the other weird part of it, too, is that Brad Bird has spent the past couple months on Twitter actually arguing that, like, you know, an animated movie doesn't necessarily make it a kid's movie. And, like, this isn't a kid's movie just because it's animated. And people are like, I can't believe you said, God damn it, in the movie or something like that. And he's like, it's animated. It's not a kid's movie. I'm like, okay, right. So why couldn't you have just not had been like, nobody died? It's just strange to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is, I'd say this is my main runner-up, but I guess slight spoilers for Jurassic World. Just briefly, I remember in the
we're not going to spoil Jurassic World anyway. Fuck Jurassic World.
Fuck Jurassic World. But I remember the only other character, aside from, you know, the Goons is a good suggestion, but, the only other character that I feel like should have died was the hacker comic relief in Jurassic World, if only because he was just so fucking annoying. I feel bad for the guy that had to play him. I'm sure every single line of dialogue in the script was like shriek loudly and annoyingly. And so, like, every time he opened his mouth, like, especially during that ridiculous sequence where, like, lava was overtaking everything, like, I just wanted him to get taken out by a meteor or something. And what's even more hilarious is that his only discernible talent and moment of character development, where he has to, like, fix the ventilation systems, doesn't even matter because the gas is still everywhere. So he was useless.
No, it's fucking stupid. And speaking of Jurassic World, let's talk about the funniest death. And you know what? I'm not even gonna put a spoiler tag on this one because, look, I'm talking about Jurassic World. It happens in the first third of the movie, and it's pretty clear what happens because the trailer gives it away. And Jackson...
mine is Hurricane Heist, and you should never watch Hurricane Heist. Just go find a GIF of this death. And you'll be.
I posted a GIF of it. If you go back to our Hurricane Heist episode, A Wrinkle in Time episode, you can see a GIF of what Jackson's about to talk about.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot you posted it. Yeah, so just do that and literally never sit through another second of Hurricane Heist.
So let's talk about the funniest death, because the dinosaurs dying in Jurassic World as they're fleeing Isla Nublar or whatever it is the funniest shit in the world.
I could not believe how many people were like it got them in like the nostalgia bones, and like it had like a sad Brachiosaurus like crying to the heaven. It's like it played a shitty rendition of the music. I couldn't believe it. I was cackling like a maniac.
It was the dumbest fucking shit, and I loved every second of it. Honest to God, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I fucking adore. It was terrible. It was absolute trash. It was one of the worst fucking movies to come out this year, but it was so much fun to watch.
In terms of, like, technical acumen and writing and directing, it was easily the lowest quality blockbuster release this year. It also might have been one of the most fun.
It was a blast.
Hurricane Heist, I guess. I don't know if you have anything else to say about the fucking dinosaurs.
No, I was gonna pan it over to you, man. Fuck, if you've seen Jurassic World, you know what we're talking about. If not, go watch that and, like, drink a beer and scroll through Twitter at the same time, and you'll have a great time.
I guess honorable mention for Hurricane Heist itself, because there's another death in the movie that made me really laugh because it was presented as dramatic. When the main character boy and his brother Breeze are children in a car, and they take shelter in this abandoned house from an incoming hurricane, and their dad goes outside like a moron to get something, and then there's a giant skull in the sky, and a, like, water tower rolls on top of him.
Yeah.
And he gets crushed like a video game character, and it's hysterical, but it's supposed to be, like, the big trauma that separates the brothers. But that's just my honorable mention. The actual...
That's just an honorable mention. Like, stress that.
You know, just the honorable mention, because the actual best death in the entire movie, and what would have made the movie good if there had been any more moments like these two in it, is when the main character, Liquid Breeze, grabs a bag of hubcaps just dangling somewhere on the street.
I think they were by the car shop that he works at.
Were they? I just remember thinking, like, where did these hubcaps come from? This movie is
I remember... Yeah, there was, like, a bag of hubcaps hanging from something, and they fell off that. I remember that.
Like, the movie was just so dark. Like, I'm sure that it was meant to be, like, the car shop that he worked at, but, like, who can tell? And so, there's a goon, taking part in the titular hurricane heist, coming after him. And so, since the winds are so strong, he picks up the hubcap, tosses it like a frisbee, and skewers it into the guy's chest using the force of the winds, and destructo discs him. It's amazing. And
it's wonderful.
So go watch the GIF. You'll have a chuckle, and then you can never watch Hurricane Heist.
Yeah, you've seen the best part of it. If you really want to, those first 5 minutes where you get the skull cloud is great, but you can turn it off after that.
Yeah, and definitely. The skull cloud that whole sequence is hilarious, but don't watch the rest of it. It'll trick you. It'll trick you into thinking the rest of it'll be funny, but it's just pain.
It's just bad. It's just bad. So with that, let's wrap up with both a positive category because it means that it fucking did a good job as a movie, but also a really sad category because we're going to talk about the saddest deaths of the year in movies.
So my pick for the saddest death, as I said, I'm going to be talking about Hereditary a lot, and this is what I'm ending on. I'm ending on Hereditary and its greatest strength and probably my favorite thing in filmmaking this year, even if I didn't love the overall movie.
And I'm going to be talking about Isle of Dogs. So it's kind of a weird flip, actually.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to hear about Isle of Dogs or Hereditary, which if you have not seen either, please go see them. They're very good.
Yes, completely agreed.
Skip to 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 56 seconds. 7 minutes and 26 seconds ahead.
So, do you want to go first on Isle of Dogs?
Sure. Mine's going to be a little bit quicker, just because I haven't seen Isle of Dogs in a long time. I'm more going off the feel I remember from the movie, which was a lot of just kind of overwhelming sadness. It's a very good, very funny, very happy movie in general, but there's a lot of just kind of overwhelming sadness associated with it. I know a whole thing about it is like the dogs have a virus, and so they're condemning them to another island. And like a lot of dogs are dying in the process of it, and it's really sad, but it's also really good, and like it doesn't feel trite. It feels like an important part of the movie every time. So yeah, I mean, just dogs dying is always sad, and I don't know. Isle of Dogs is a good movie, so it's the saddest.
I mean, it's such like an obvious trite cliche at this point. Like if you want to manipulate your audience into crying, you kill the dog. But like the fact that this is a movie about dogs and at its core is about like why they're wonderful and why we need them. Like that sentiment feels less like a cliche and just more like a fact when you have a sad doggo death. It hits you a lot harder.
Yeah, for sure. They were all characters. They weren't like, the kid in A Quiet Place or another dog where they just get taken out for no explicable reason other than to elicit a reaction.
I forgot about the kid from A Quiet Place. That's where the memes began. That's where I was branded as a child hater.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what, I'm not a child hater because I was shook to my core when this child died in Hereditary. Charlie, the big centerpiece death. And oh man, was this so well executed that I thought I was going to have to leave the theater. Where to even start with this? So just like in another movie, the whole setup could have come across as like really contrived, but in this feels like genuinely traumatic and like difficult. And so for those of you who haven't seen the movie, this is the part where the liquid light, solid light, whatever character, Light Yagami.
I fucking forgot about that.
The Naked Brothers band member 2. So the older brother is forced to take his creepy little sister along to like this party while he tries to like do shitty teenagery things and get like laid and stuff. And so she is established as having a nut allergy, and like he just is like, whatever, like don't bother me, twerp. And she eats like this cookie that has nuts in it or something, like some sort of snack, and she starts like panicking, like she starts like getting choked up, like she doesn't have her EpiPen, and so he's like, oh shit, like what am I doing? I need to like take her to the hospital. I can't get an ambulance, like people are like doing drugs here and shit. So he starts driving her to the hospital, and to like help get more air, she like rolls down the window and like sticks her head out of the window. And while this is happening, they pass by a telephone pole that decapitates her, and we don't see it. You just like hear the noise, and we just get a long time where we see the brother's face as he slowly realizes what happened. And then he just drives home. He gets out of his car and he lays awake in bed all night, not telling anybody that he had just accidentally gotten his sister killed. and leaves the body in the back seat for his parents to find in the morning. And we just hear his mom scream, and then the movie really doesn't pull any punches because you think maybe you're safe from like the actual gore of the situation, but they show her head like decomposing and getting like eaten alive by like ants and shit. And so that is horrifying enough on its own, like an image that was just really like burned into my brain. But then like just the scenes after that where like Charlie's body is being put into the ground and her mom is just like wailing and like nonstop between scenes and just like cannot process what is happening. It is the most raw and fucked up like presentation of what loss is that I've ever seen on screen. And so the fact that, you know, not just during this scene, but after, where, you know, the rest of the plot starts to unfold and like the resentments and like mental illnesses in the family are like starting to come out and like build up, and the mom is blaming the son, and like they're just like fighting all the time. It feels very, very darkly realistic. And so is sad the right word? Maybe not. Maybe because I didn't exactly like cry. But it was something that like I felt in my gut, like this
realist.
Yeah, like this like profound presentation of what loss is. Like so much so that I thought I was gonna have to walk out of the theater and tell Sean like, we can't do this. We can't talk about this movie this week. So like, so if only. You know, I'd prefer if people watch this movie, and, you know, despite my personal disappointments with it, I do still recommend that everybody watch it. And so if you know, if you weren't convinced by Sean putting it as top 3, like maybe me like kind of dissing it earlier, like tampered your like desire to go see it, go watch it, because that
and B, how dare you? How dare you put more stock in Jackson?
Yeah, you know, we see that you know, we're over here, you know, asking the kids who they want to stay with this weekend, and they're choosing me. But no, seriously, go watch Hereditary. Even though, like, you know, I just spoiled it for you, it's still worth just seeing for yourself. Although, and
also, you didn't spoil it. That was the first third of the movie.
And that was like the beginning. That's like the setup, basically. But I also will say that if you have experienced some sort of loss or are easily rattled, maybe don't. Like, for your own
this
sake.
Movie can fuck you up. It's a rough fucking movie. It's really good, but it's really rough.
Yeah. On a lighter note, I think we did it. I think we did the Horsies for the second year in a row, officially annual.
Well, as we're wrapping up, then, I'm gonna actually kind of drop something on you that I was just kind of thinking about. A little bit of a surprise. What are you excited about this year? 2019? What do you got? Like, what's your? Give me one or two that you're excited about.
2019. Well, so the thing is that I haven't paid too much close attention to like what is upcoming that is actually going to be good. So I can't say for sure what my genuine, like, most excited movie I am about, because oftentimes I find that my favorite movies are the ones that kind of surprise me, that I didn't know were happening, like Sorry to Bother You. But I will say this: 2019 is going to be a great year for films that feature horrifying live-action animals. Because
yes,
we have the Sonic the Hedgehog live-action movie, and we have Detective Pikachu. And when the Detective Pikachu trailer came out, there was a big controversy over whether the designs were good, whether Pikachu was cute, whether it was going to be bad. And then, like, the next week, Avi Arad, I think, is producing it, and Sega and everyone involved says, "Hold my beer." And they release this horrifying muscular Sonic with, like, human eyeballs and fur, even though hedgehogs don't have fur.
My dude. You've left out the fact that both The Lion King and Dumbo are coming out next year too.
Oh my god, I didn't even know about Dumbo. I forgot about The Lion King. Shit. Talk about a pointless remake. They're just doing it with furries. There's no that makes me so mad that they're doing this now, because when they started this, when they started the whole live action Disney thing, like they started with Maleficent, which, you know, for whatever, you know, criticisms you might have, it wasn't just Sleeping Beauty again. Like it was
kind of an interesting new telling.
Yeah, it was an alternate take. And then like even the Cinderella movie was a bit more of a straightforward remake, but also like part of the point of that movie was to try and give Cinderella as a character more agency and like genuinely kind of update it. But then you have Beauty and the Beast, and it's just Beauty and the Beast in live action. And then you have the Lion King, and it's just the Lion King with the Jungle Book animals, but it's not live action anymore because you don't have a kid running around, and that was the point of the Jungle Book remake. I don't get why they're doing this.
I don't know. I'm going to mention, though, and I'm going to talk about things that I'm actually excited about, because I didn't realize that you weren't as aware of what was coming out in 2019, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, I was going to mention, don't you worry, I was going to fucking mention the Sonic movie and Detective Pikachu no matter what.
All right, so fair shake. But no, the trailer for Us just dropped, which I'm really excited about. That's Jordan Peele's new movie.
Oh, yeah, I am excited for that. I haven't seen the trailer yet, but I am excited to see what he's got cooked up next.
It looks promising. I'm also admittedly really excited about the new Godzilla movie, King of the Monsters. I like the 2014 one a lot. It was kind of trash, but it was great in a way that I really liked. And I'm also excited about Lego Movie 2. I'm tepidly excited about that one. I really like the first one, and Lord and Miller have not disappointed yet, so high hopes, but we'll see.
Lego Movie 2, I'm trying to keep my hopes low for that one, because I remember seeing the trailer for the Lego Movie. I was like, oh, this is just going to be a bunch of memes and shit. And then I was surprised. I mean, it was memes and shit, and they were funny memes and shit. But then I was surprised when it was like a genuine movie, too. And so I didn't really love when I saw the Lego Movie 2's trailer, but I'm trying to keep that expectation low, just in case it does turn out to be like a shit sequel. Then I will have lost nothing. But if it turns out to be as good as Lego Movie 1, then I will be in for a treat.
Lord and Miller have just been fucking killing it, so I don't know, man. I've got decent expectations, and I mean, looking down the list, there's actually a lot of really cool stuff coming out. There's Hellboy, which that's kind of. And I'm also genuinely really excited about there's a third How to Train Your Dragon coming out, and the first two are unironically some of my favorite animated movies.
That's a good opportunity for me to watch the first two, because I never have.
Yeah, I'll make you do that, and we can go watch How to Train Your Dragon 3 for the podcast.
Outstanding. Sounds like a plan.
This is the new strategy, is just trick Jackson into watching things I like.
I mean, it's a good strategy, one that I very much appreciate, so... because left to my own devices, I'll sit around and play Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for 10 hours a day.
But yeah, no, I do think in general, though, Jackson's right in that, like, the things that we're going to end up being most excited about are the things we're going to find out about, like, midway through summer after Cannes is over or something, and be like, oh, hey, that's coming out. That looks like a lot of fun. So, we'll see.
Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for another year of deaths, another year of life, another year of Life Day, next year.
Yeah, we're not doing that one again.
No, we're not. We're absolutely fucking not.
That said, though, I've been your host, Sean McKinda. I've been talking about my Twitter all the time. You can find that at Sean_McKinda on Twitter. You can also check out my website at isortof.com.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me over on Twitter at Jackson J. Keller, where with the new year brings new things. I keep teasing something good's gonna happen, and we're making progress. We're coming along, so stay tuned.
Excitement mounts. If you want to follow the podcast, you can at BADH_cast on Twitter. I tweet out some stuff just occasionally from there. There's a video on there of Jackson's request from the fucking Santa Claus Conquers the Martians video. And that's still open. If you want to be like, hey, here's a better way, because Sean did that really quickly and it's pretty bad. You can do that better than me. Please do. Jackson would love it.
Even if you don't do better than Sean, just any attempt to put Metal Gear Rising songs to hokey 60s fight scenes will just tickle me in all the best possible ways.
So there you go. If you want to tickle Jackson, weird, but go ahead. Other than that, As always, thanks to Lords of the Highway for using the theme song. It's Suicide Alternate Takeoff. The album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're on Spotify and all that good stuff. Go check them out. Also, 25yearslatersite.com for hosting us. A bunch of great people doing a bunch of really intelligent analysis and the like. Go check them out at 25yearslatersite.com. And do them a favor and go like them on Facebook. They're, looking to do that. So help them out.
Like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, go ring out in the streets, on street corners.
Next month, we're going to be talking about Alien basically all month. Because we realized that we've been doing a bunch of weird sporadic Alien stuff, and we've never actually just gone through and done Alien 3, 4, Prometheus, and Covenant. So it's going to be a 4-month.
This will be interesting because I have not watched any of those movies more than once, and they are all very divisive in their own way, and each one has defenders and supporters and people who hate it. Pretty much people only agree that Alien 1 and Aliens are good, and even then Aliens is contentious in some circles. So I'm excited to come back to this. I'm excited.
You want to see contentious in some circles? I'm not a huge fan of Aliens. So yeah, I've actually never seen any of them, so I'm very excited for it. So next week we're going to be talking about Alien 3. Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go